Spontaneous speaking video number 20. So lately I've been pondering on God's sovereignty, and just for those of you who may not know, I am indeed a devout Christian, and in this specific spontaneous speaking video, try saying that 3 times fast, I'm going to be referencing a lot of biblical scriptures and everything, and I'm just going to be talking through some of the ideas that I've been having. And the first one that I'm actually going to go with is Jeremiah 1, 5 to 10. Actually planning to bring my actual Bible today, but that didn't really go through. But in Jeremiah 1, 5 to 10, I'll read it out loud. It says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you." This is God speaking to Jeremiah. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, Jeremiah said, "Ah, Lord God, behold, I do not know how to speak, for I am only a youth." But the Lord said to me, "Do not say I am only a youth. For to all whom I send you, you shall go, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, "Behold, I have put my words in your mouth." That's extremely comforting to me. Just especially the verse 5 where he says, "I knew you your whole life before you had even exited your mother's womb." Like, God knows the beginning, God knows the end of your life before your life even begins. So that's very comforting to me, to know that there is indeed like a higher power out there that I can rely on and lean back on even when I do not know things. And on top of that, I like what it says in Psalm 37, 23 to 24. "The steps of a man are established by the Lord when he delights in the Lord's way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand." Out of Christianese terms, that's basically just saying that for people who actually, it's kind of like Romans 8:28. I love that verse, where it says that, I know the verse, can't remember it off the top of my head right now. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called to his purpose. And I think that this is just another version of that of God basically reminding us of that if we indeed humble ourselves and obey his word, then he will, as it says in verse 23 of Psalm 37, he will establish our steps. And it's so comforting to know, once again, you can rest in the peace of knowing that every step that you're taking is being sovereignly directed by God, by a greater, higher power. And I think that that's a very comforting thing to just keep in mind whenever you're going through hard times. If you are truly one of God's people, if you are truly a close friend of God, if you are truly walking in the will of God, then you can be confident in knowing that everything that's going on around you, you are in God's palm. He has destined your future, he has created your future for you, and you are just walking into it. You are discovering your future, you are not creating it, despite what I said in my video yesterday with Kylisa. I am not literally creating my future. God is revealing my future to me. And same for you. Those of you who are actually walking in God's will, who are actually in constant communication with God, he has already created your future and you are walking into it. And just as it says in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. That includes the bad things. And we'll actually talk more about that in just a few minutes. So I want to just get through these last 2 scriptures. 1 Samuel 23, verse 17. 1 Samuel 23, verse 17. "And he said to him, 'Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father also knows this.'" The context of this is David and Jonathan were running away from Jonathan's father. See, David was destined to be the king. God told him back in 1 Samuel 16:1, the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons. And then in that same chapter, verse 12, it says, and he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes, talking about David, and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. And then 13, then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. God anointed David to be king. And I just firmly believe that if God said, this is what's going to happen, this is my plan for you, that's what's going to unfold, especially if you're continuing to walk in God's will. So referring back to the scripture before when David and Jonathan are in the mountains, Saul was Jonathan's father. So Jonathan was actually supposed to be the next king, if Saul was to die off. But Jonathan was also David's best friend. They were super, super close. And you can see the beauty of their friendship and how Jonathan was not even envious, oh, I should be the next king or anything. But instead, he was helping David escape from his own father, who King Saul did not want David to become the next king. But Jonathan was helping David escape from King Saul, who was trying to kill David at the time. And David starts freaking out, yo, man, we're out here in the mountains. I don't know what the heck is going to happen. And Jonathan's look, my father is not going to kill you. My father will not lay a hand on you. You know how I know this? Because God said that you are going to be king. Now, how can you become king if you are annihilated by my father? That those two things just can't happen. So you're going to either have to believe what God said and believe that we're going to get through this, or you can believe our circumstances right now and just, worry about nothing. I found that verse very encouraging as well, because I know that we tend to go through a lot of things in life that make us sort of stagger, sort of worry about what's going on in our present tense, even especially as a college student. I go through this thing all the time. A lot of times the decisions that I have to make on a daily basis, I'm man, what if this was the wrong decision? What if that was the wrong decision? I don't know. And I just have learned now, and I'm practicing this more and more, to rely on the sovereignty of God. Now, Lecrae often tweets something that a day without prayer is a day that we foolishly believe we have under control. And I think that's beautifully said, because a lot of us, we tend to wake up, including myself, we tend to just go through the day, and we don't even ask God for direction. We do not even commit our day into God's hands. All of those decisions, we have just left God out of them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that God will not help you with those decisions just because you're not asking for that day. But it's just way more comforting to know that, okay, I have officially invited God into this mix, into whatever decision I am making. And so, due to me inviting God into this decision, whatever decision I end up making will sovereignly end me up where I need to be. I think of it as one of the people in my Bible study group one time that I used to teach, he said that his father gives an example of God's sovereignty as a ship. Everybody is on this ship. You have chosen to be on this ship. So us as Christians, we have chosen not to jump off board, but we have chosen to be on this ship. Now, on this ship, we have the freedom to do whatever we want. Maybe if it's a cruise ship, we can go play basketball. We can go swimming. We can go hang out. I don't know, whatever you want on this cruise ship. However, God is the captain of this cruise ship. And no matter what you do on this cruise ship, you're still going to end up at the destination where God intended for you to get to. And I think that's actually very beautiful, because me, especially learning about personality typing and all of that, it's just so interesting how I, in high school, took a huge interest in English. My old teacher, Dr. Hugh, or Mr. Hugh, now he's a doctor, he just had me very heavily interested in the English language and all of that. And I used to watch things like The Great Debaters, and I loved Denzel Washington's preaching style in that. Well, not preaching, his teaching style in that. And I wanted to be an English teacher when I originally came to college. And throughout time, I took English 101, and they was talking about all the citations and all of that. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that I want to do all that. It's too much details and everything. So then somehow I ended up going to the philosophy route, and I wanted to be an apologist. And that's basically somebody who goes around preaching and proving the evidence and existence of God. And I was very interested in doing that. But then it reached a point where I also realized, you know what, like philosophy, although it's interesting to me, although apologetics is very interesting to me, I don't think that this is really what I am destined to do in life. And throughout this whole process, I kept on praying and praying and praying. So it's kind of like I was narrowing down to what exactly I needed to do. Maybe I'm even still in that process, but I feel closer to it now more than ever, now that I'm in a communications major where I am now aspiring to become a motivational speaker. I'm aspiring to become a blogger, a YouTuber, a youth pastor, personal development coach, somebody who helps people in life to just navigate and grow. And I feel most at home now than when I was originally trying to become an English teacher or trying to become a philosopher or an apologist. And I think that it's just so interesting that later on, after I've already made this decision, then I find out about MBTI through Jamila, and I found out that my MBTI is in Myers-Briggs, and I find out that I'm an ENFJ, and ENFJs are known to be majors. They're known to major in communication. They're known to that's their highest major they go into. And essentially what I was reading about that was that I'm naturally wired for communication. I'm naturally wired to be good at exactly what I'm doing. And ironically, in the same sense, Jamila is a musician. She's a great, phenomenal singer. And before she even knew about Myers-Briggs, she's always been interested in that and everything. And we read into her stuff, and it's like, oh, ISFPs, which is what Jamila is, they're known as the musician. Mine is known as the... well, there's a whole bunch of different names that they have for all of them. For Jamila, it's the composer, the artist, the musician, all of which she is. As a musician, as an artist, that's what she is. And they say that that's what they tend to like go into. Then you have mine. We're known as the most persuasive, natural speakers, smooth talking, whatever. And the coaches, the mentors. And I feel like, wow, it's just, all of that to say is that it's just so crazy how God had propelled us in the direction all along, and we had no idea what it was, but that was all confirmation that this is what I've been wanting you to do. This is what I've wired you to do. You were made for this. And it's good to know that I was naturally made for this. So it doesn't matter what other competition I'm going to be in. Like, for example, African parents, African families, I was at home for winter break, and my grandma and my auntie, they were talking to me, oh, Nana, why don't you want to be a lawyer or a doctor? You know, that's going to get you a solid job and blah, blah, blah. If you want to be a public speaker, then, you know, if you don't get bookings, then you're not going to get money and blah, 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 blah. And the way that I combated that was by telling them that if I know that this is what God has called me to do, then it doesn't matter how other people are struggling. I know that God is going to provide for me. He's going to provide the money. He's going to provide the people that I should go speak to. He's going to order my steps as he's promised in his word. And they debated back by saying, you'd be such a great lawyer. And I told him, yeah, but that's probably true. But not only am I not passionate about law, but on top of that, wouldn't I be even better at what God has called me to be? What I was made to be. And so my whole point is that if you've discovered what you are made for, if you have discovered what God has called you to be, then go ahead and pursue it. For real. Like, go for it. And I'm going to end it off with this last story. It's from the Bible, Joseph's life. And it's one out of many. Joseph had a dream that the whole solar system bowed down to him. He went and told his 12 brothers, well, his stepbrothers, half-brothers, and his dad about this dream. They were already jealous of him because they believed that he was his dad's favorite, which he sort of was. And basically, long story short, they betrayed Joseph. They sold him. A whole bunch of hell broke loose, not only during the next few weeks, but the next couple of decades. And there was even a point where Joseph was sold into slavery, and he was working underneath his boss called Potiphar. And Potiphar left for the day, and Potiphar's wife seduced Joseph to get into bed. And she was doing this consecutively. Finally, one day, she just tried to like grab him, basically like rape him. And my man Joseph took off his clothes and ran. Not all of it. I think it was just his jacket. And he ran out of her bedroom, or ran out of wherever the Bible says they were at. And when he returned back, then apparently Potiphar's wife had complained to her husband, saying that Joseph had attempted to make a move on her. And Joseph's like, no, I did not do that. And Potiphar's husband's like, dang, I'm really disappointed. Maybe it is true, maybe it isn't. But my wife is saying this is what happened. I have no choice but to throw you into jail. Joseph goes into jail, and it's so easy at this point to assume, dang, God, you told me that this is what I was going to be in life. How the heck is all of this now happening? How do you tell me this is what I'm going to be, and now all of a sudden I'm like, dang, you know what? I'm in jail now. I could have slept with Potiphar's wife. I chose to obey you, and I'm still ending up in jail now. But if I had not obeyed you, then maybe I wouldn't even be in jail right now. Like, God, you promised this. But I believe that Joseph had a very cheerful and faithful heart throughout the whole process. He was even lifted up in jail. And later on down the road, all of these things worked together for his good. He came out of jail. He became the king's advisor. And next thing you know, he became king as well. And he was able to get his family, the ones who even betrayed him, to come to him. They were begging at his feet. He revealed who he was, and happily ever after. That whole story is just proof to show that God really does order steps. Even when you think that you've made a mistake, if you are walking in God's will, he will either fix that mistake. It's a paradox. You don't know if you made a mistake or if you did exactly what God wanted you to do. You don't catch God by surprise. When Joseph told his dream to his family, God was not like, oh no, what the heck am I going to do now? Joseph did that. I believe that God gave Joseph the dream at the time, knowing that Joseph was going to tell his family, and knowing that, okay, when Joseph tells his family this, I'm going to use this in this way so that down the road it's going to happen. The events of today may not be clear to you until tomorrow. My biggest advice to you is to keep on seeking God, pressing forth to the calling that he has called for you. Continue to get to know him. Continue to place your trust in him. Continue to believe that he not only knows what's best for you, but wants what's best for you. His ways are way much higher than our ways. His thoughts are way much deeper and sovereign than our thoughts, as it says in Isaiah. And in Proverbs, it also says that we should put all of our trust in him and not lean on our own understanding. So, yeah, you were made for this. Just keep that in mind. And it's already been 19 minutes. Sorry. Done.